study abroad program this summer. Hi, Augie. So let's see. Um, before, let's see, I don't see any questions yet, but why don't I pull up the Peru website and just maybe, we didn't do this last time, but I think it might be helpful, Augie. Just maybe read the short like blurb for students. Okay, here we go. So this is a summer A quarter program. Students, well, it's mostly summer A. It's partly goes into summer B. So it's from June 12th to July 15th. Students are getting 12 credits of Spanish language courses. And let me read this for y'all. So students will take Spanish conversation, culture, and grammar classes for 5 hours a day, 5 days a week in small classes of 5 to 6 students. In addition to the classes, students will be participating in an excursion to Machu Picchu, stay with a host family, and will be able to practice their Spanish language during free time. So, with all that, Augie, still no questions. So why don't we, sorry, what were you going to say?
I wanted to clarify, it does end for the B term. So students will be able to take, are you hearing me okay?
Yes, I am. Sorry, yes.
Yeah, students will be able to take classes in the B term.
Okay, thank you. Yes, you're right, because it starts a little bit before graduation.
Right.
So for those students who are graduating, you still can graduate. You still obviously can get your diploma, but if you want to attend graduation, that's something that you need to talk to Augie and others about. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, well, Augie, why don't we start with a high level question. Why did you choose Cusco or Peru for a study abroad program?
Well, our program of the Spanish language and cultures, excuse me, we alternate taking a study abroad to Spain and then one to Latin America. And we've had programs in the past to Mexico and to Ecuador. And really, you know, could be anywhere in Latin America. We can go and study Spanish anywhere. Well, we picked Cusco just because of its uniqueness. It has a really deep connection with the past as the former capital of the Inca Empire, and just everything that brings, in addition to the Spanish language school, everything else that the city itself brings to the program. Trip to Machu Picchu, of course. So, you know, with that idea of like we could pick anywhere in Latin America, it was one of the top choices just for the place that it is.
And do you have any, like, you've been there before, obviously. I know a lot of faculty have personal connections or reasons why they choose the locations that they go. Is that the case for you?
Not really. My wife happens to be Peruvian, and so I've been to Peru a few times, but she's not from Cusco, and it's quite a ways away from her where she's from. But so it really was just for the place.
Cool. Okay, awesome, y'all. So, something that a lot of students, I think, have misconceptions about is coursework. I think some students think they're going to be like sitting in class all day long, which they do here. And they're like, why should I do that somewhere else? And then other students are maybe on the opposite end of the spectrum where they're like, we don't have to do anything. This is a vacation, right? So could you share how coursework in the Peru program works and how it compares to, you know, taking classes at UWT?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the basic idea, you know, fundamentally, it's a language program. You're going there to take courses in language. So in that sense, it's the same as, you know, taking a class on campus. The difference is the intensity level of focus on language. So it's Monday through Friday, typically about 5 hours a day of class classwork, and that's divided between grammar classes, conversation classes, culture classes, where you might be cooking or learning a dance step or something like that. So it's broken up through the day, but really intense coursework in Spanish. And the benefit of that, of course, in addition to everything else, is the really vast improvement that you can make in that shorter period of time by focusing in on and immersing yourself in Spanish. So
And
it's,
sorry.
it's the classes are small. They're 5 people in a class, and intense, right? Like kind of sitting around a table with the instructor and practicing. So, it's a rigorous coursework, but at the same time, it has this very personalized feel to it.
And I think something that we touched on previously and that I talk to students a lot about is the awesome thing about going on a language intensive program is that you use what you learned in class literally like 2 minutes later or for the rest of the day or the week, whatever. So you're getting the foundation in your class and then using it with your host parents when you're going out to eat, when you're on the bus or whatever, right?
Right.
And I wanted to ask.
Practice
Oh, go ahead.
all the things that you're learning about in class, and there's always those moments where you hear somebody use something that you learned in the classroom out in town. And you're like, oh wow, I understood what they said. We just covered it.
Yeah.
And it's really gratifying when that happens.
And Augie, I don't speak Spanish, but I know like lots of languages, there's various dialects, and I'm wondering, I have had one student ask me what considerations students should, think about or how they should prepare for the difference between like a Peruvian Spanish and maybe the Spanish that they're learning here, or Spanish from Mexico or Spanish from Spain. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are differences, of course, and I always, when students ask me these questions, like I compare it to like the difference between the United States and English in England. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We still can understand each other. There's a different way of pronouncing things. There's a different accent, and there's some different vocabulary words. But generally, there's no problem understanding each other. That's what I always point to for the differences between different countries in Spanish. Very similar to that.
Got it.
Ireland and Scotland, you could make them, go to different countries and you have small differences. Like
right.
That.
And then one more thing about the Spanish language, Augie, I think students are often interested in figuring out like how they'll be placed. How does that work to make sure that they're put in the correct level of coursework?
So for our program, you can be at any level, including 0, right? Like no Spanish whatsoever. And then either based on the coursework that you've done here, like you're an advanced student and you're taking 300 level classes, it's just easy to place. And aside from that, we have a placement test that you'll take. If you don't have coursework to base the choice on, we have a placement test that you'll take, and that would determine where you're at. So for this program, like I said, there's no requirement for any particular level. If you're a student, you'll study the beginning level. If you're intermediate, you'll study that. And if you're an advanced student, you'll study much like you would here, literature or content classes rather than grammar.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Awesome. You mentioned earlier that students are generally in class for about 5 hours doing Spanish coursework. Could you tell us a little bit more about like what the day-to-day schedule looks like for students participating in this program?
Well, if I don't answer your question, just
okay.
typically starts at 9 and they're like 50-minute blocks of time throughout the day. It's in the school that we use is um, like a really large house, like really large, what used to be a house, that's been repurposed. So the classrooms are small rooms around there, and then there's common areas.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll go to your class, like I said, a limit of 5 people. You'll be there, you'll work on a topic, take a break, and then move on to the next class. So it has a similar rhythm to a normal class day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then usually in the afternoon, there'll be more culture-based classes, and then that's pretty much it. To be very familiar with everybody.
So the rest of the day is basically the student's choice to do what they want to do.
Uh, you know, you'll have homework.
Of course.
Foundation is the coursework, of course, but aside from that, yeah, then you have free time. The rest of the time, Cusco has a lot of things to see and do down there, and so you'll have lots of time to explore the city and participate in those activities.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think students, again, we've discussed this already, but struggle to understand like what they're going to be doing the whole time. And the point again of this is that they're doing their coursework and their homework, of course, but then part of their coursework is being in Peru and practicing Spanish, right?
Yeah, I think that's interesting what you brought up, and it just made me think about like it may not feel so much like coursework because it's you know think about like I just thought about this, so I have to think about how to conceptualize it. But because uh, the whole experience, you're practicing Spanish with the host family and with and set out in town and watching TV and listening to music. So it sort of feels like just like participating in life, the
Right.
course
Right.
itself. So it has this. I think it has this real immediacy. Like the the things that you're studying, you're going to go right out and use those. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a real good motive factor for makes the learning, I think, easier. Maybe not easier, but more fun. I guess
Yeah,
more excited to learn because you're getting to put it into practice right away.
exactly. Yeah, I think you're right. And it's like you said, it often doesn't feel like you're doing work because it is fun and you're exploring and you're just sort of living your life. And that's the point, right? To feel like you're immersed in a place and that is the work, just to be there and talk and listen and read. Yeah. And I think you mentioned, activities. Students obviously can choose what they are interested in doing after classes. Are there specific things that you wanted to touch on that students that you'd recommend students do, or other activities in Cusco that you've heard about?
I think many Latin American cities are built around a central plaza, colonial architecture,
Mm-hmm.
and so something that is free and that lots of people do, including people who live in Mexico, is just go down to the central square and just hang out there and meet people and watch people, and it's something that we don't typically have a lot of in the United States. That a community place where people gather just
Mm-hmm.
just for the sake of gathering. So I think that's a fun experience to have because it's typically very different from most people's experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Cusco that was uh, the seat of the Inca Empire, and originally it had like a fortress wall. still there, but it was built as a fortress. And so just there, you can take like a 30-minute walk to the north of town and visit that.
Cool.
This really impressive stone wall that has these massive boulders that are massive blocks that we still don't know how it was constructed, and there's lots of the Incan, lots of leftovers from that civilization all through the foundations of several buildings. You can. Mm-hmm. That's a fun thing to do, is go exploring and look for those what are now archaeological sites.
Yeah.
But they're all over the place.
Yeah.
Would say those are a couple of highlights.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just, it's like, I think students forget maybe, I know we live in a very Eurocentric world, but if you're thinking about like Rome, and the ancient, Romans live amongst ancient ruins, same in like Cairo, it's right next to the pyramids. Cusco's the same, right? It's all that same kind of vibe where you've got, people in suits going to work next to like an ancient fortress. And for us, since we, have not been on this land for very long, it's so enthralling to be so close to physically touch history. I think that's a really good point, that students can do a lot of that stuff for free and just explore. And that's sort of the point of studying abroad in general, right? To just sort of walk around and see what you see and learn what you learn.
Right. I would say that's a really good comparison with Rome, but also Cusco, that traditional indigenous practice very strong. So at the same time, like people in business, it's a modern with an airport. Mm-hmm. There are still people that raise llamas like they have done for centuries and live off of that, and it's really interesting mix of cultures.
Wow. Yeah. Cool. That's a great point. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm coming. Get ready. Another question that I think a lot of students think about: what is the weather like? What should students be packing? What should they expect?
So we're opposite in the season. So for our summer, it's winter in South America. So cold, but it's. I mentioned this last time, but in case you didn't know, that it goes at 10,000 feet of elevation. It's in the mountains of the Andes, and it's a hot climate. So there's not much Cusco or rain. So the winter is kind of like a fall for us, but without. Mm-hmm. It's usually really bright, sunny during the day, and the lack of atmosphere, the elevation, makes that even more the case. You have to be careful not to get a sun because the intensity of the sun. So usually warm, like shirt sleeves during the day, and then at night you need a coat. It's brisk, but it's usually not raining, snowing, cold, but nice to sit out in the plaza and have a warm drink. Mm-hmm. So, let's say, like, for what to pack or what the weather's like, sort of that late fall weather, especially at night. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think something students should know as well, and when we're talking about like packing and sort of pre-departure for the Peru program and for all study abroad programs, the faculty, program directors, meet with students several times before to discuss all of this stuff, everybody. So you're not going to just be expected to like show up in Cusco with no information, right? My office helps the students prepare. Augie will help the students prepare through several meetings and announcements, et cetera, et cetera. So um, we won't, leave you hanging. There will be more information in the coming months about that stuff.
So, the idea is to prepare everybody as much as possible so that you get the most out of the experience, not trying to figure out, what's happening
Yeah,
while you're already there.
exactly. Um, Augie, I'm realizing we both have talked a lot about walking, and I know when students come back from study abroad, one of the biggest shocks they have is the amount of walking they do, because that is not something that is as common in the States. So can you just touch on that? How walkable is Cusco, and just in general, like how much walking will the students be doing to class and to their host family's house, etc.?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Probably more than you do here. Not unmanageable. Like I would compare it to, like, if you lived in Seattle or you lived in New York or something like that, you know, someplace where a car is more of a hassle than that. You do a lot more public transportation and a lot more walk. So would compare it to that.
Yeah.
Difference with Cusco is that because of you got to take it easy for the first week or so. Be mindful of that. Um, the traditional is a little detailed, but the traditional medicine for dealing with altitude sickness that people have been using in Cusco for thousands of years is a coca leaf. So, yeah. So, every hotel that you visit, restaurants will have coca leaves that grab, and it's not cocaine. It hasn't been processed into cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Not illegal, but it helps with altitude sickness. For people will usually chew on those,
Mm-hmm.
like chewing a sprig of mint or something like that,
Right. Right.
or having a tea.
Mm-hmm.
So, and how that works with walking, the same, like taking it easy the first week or so, and sure you have some coca tea
Mm-hmm.
to help with that is
And
important.
what about like public transit? What should students expect, in terms of getting around besides just walking? Buses, etc.?
Yeah, you can take the bus, and your host family will help you with that if you want to. Um, most students, the truth is, most students use Uber just like you would any other place. If you want to ride somewhere, that's what people will use, and it's the same. It's exactly the same and the same convenience, and
Mm-hmm.
it is everywhere else.
Got it. So you just use your app. You're good.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. We have about 5 minutes left, Augie. Let's see. I'm looking at the list. I think a good place to end is, what kind of things can students expect to take away from the experience?
That's a great question, and I think for me, the most important thing is the level of fluency that they'll take away in Spanish, and that's what the program is all about fundamentally. So there's just nothing really that compares to an immersion experience as far as being able to gain fluency quick, and like this really profound level of fluency.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's something that you'll take away. Your proficiency in Spanish will you'll be amazed at that by the time the program is over. You'll typically make strong connections with their host family. Sometimes they develop friendships that last for the rest of their lives. And you have a friend South America. They have a friend in North America for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's something taking away the experience and again, study abroad in general, they're not like vacations to a place where you go there and you stay in a hotel and you get like a sampling of the culture. This is really living the culture. So that to get that experience of just on a fundamental level, really participating in another culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that will stay with you for life and will probably influence you the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
I think those things are the most important ones.
Mm-hmm. If I could add on to what you already said, not specifically maybe to the Peru program, to any language immersion program or study abroad in general, maybe, I think, like you said, um, living somewhere and immersing yourself in a place is not something you often get to do again after you're a student. And I think we focus a lot in our office in general on the academics, which are incredibly important. But an amazing thing that happens when you're immersed in another place is that you learn so much about yourself and how you identify as American or what other identities you have. They are brought to light in ways that you hadn't thought before, and then you have to sort of wrestle with that and maybe decide that maybe you're not that person or you are, and this is why. So I think a lot of students don't expect or anticipate to have a sort of a change in how they are or how they feel or their own identity, and that kind of change can really help you figure out like what you want in your future or in your academic life. So that's one other thing I'll say, that there's a lot of personal changes that happen to individuals, and a lot of the experiences students have while studying abroad are things that will help them later in life that they don't think about, right? Like um, being confused and just going with it and pushing forward, right? That's a skill that we all need in jobs. Or learning how to communicate with someone who's from a different culture, navigating in spaces that weren't created for you. Those are things that we all need in this world, and those are and the experiences you have studying abroad can help you talk about those kinds of skills, like in a job interview or in a cover letter or for grad school or anything like that. So that's something else to consider, that these experiences aren't going to be left in Peru, that they will follow you throughout your life. And it's hard, speaking from experience, it's hard to get that after college. So if that's not a plug, I don't know what is.
Very well. And that, especially at UW-T, you know, understandably, students are really focused on getting their degrees and getting into the workforce. And like you said, this is a time when you can do something for yourself that, you keep this experience for the rest of your life and it will affect your life in ways that you can't conceive of before.
Exactly. Well, I'm getting a little bit nostalgic over here. Um, anything else, Augie, that you wanted to say that we didn't cover?
Um, my email is amachine, just like AMACINE at UWT. And if anybody would like to email me, or if you'd like to arrange a call or something like that, if you have more questions, I'd be happy to talk with you about that. And that's it.
Maybe I'll add the deadline for this program is January 31st. So y'all still have plenty of time. I don't want to encourage people to do things last minute, but lots of students in the past, and I imagine this year, apply the day before, and that's fine. There are lots of scholarship opportunities, and financial aid can cover the cost of study abroad. So if anybody has questions about anything like that, please either message us through Instagram, or you can email me at Kroll, KROLLC at uw.edu. And then the last thing I'll add is that this Peru program is incredibly affordable. I think it's our most inexpensive program. It's really comparable to the cost of tuition. So keep that in mind. I know a lot of students think study abroad is incredibly expensive, and we know higher education is expensive, but this is aligned or even, less expensive than that. So keep that in mind, everybody. And Augie, thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Thank you for all for coming.
Yeah, y'all, we had a good turnout today, Augie. So I'll record. I mean, it's been recording, so I'll send this out to all of the students who started applications, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye.
Bye. Adios.